Welkom in het Europees Parlement. Welkom bij Europese Gesprekken met Barbara en Gerolf. Ook dit keer uw duidingsprogramma om meer te weten te komen over Europa en haar werking. Ook dit keer weer met een speciale gast, Jaco Kleynhans. Jaco, Mr. Kleynhans, welcome. You're the head of public relations and of the Afrikaner movement Solidariteit in South Africa. And you're a writer of opinion pieces, a lot of opinion pieces. Can you tell me, my first question, what is the current situation in South Africa with, let's say, the farmers, the South African farmers?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I think this is a very important question because many people in Europe don't know what's happening on South African farms. You know, for us as Afrikaner people, the situation is really bad. You know, in the last 3 decades, about 3,000 farmers were killed on their farms in South Africa.
And you 3,000?
Yes, 3,000 farmers were killed on their farms, and that still happens on a weekly basis. There's at least one farm attack every week in South Africa. On average, 50 to 60 people are killed on farms in South Africa every year. And then you must remember, in a country of 64 million people, there's only 30,000 commercial farmers left. And there's a lot of torture involved in these farm attacks. So it's not just simple crime. It's not like we have just a crime problem in South Africa. The attacks on farms are very ethnically based. It's an attack on Afrikaner farmers, very specifically, and people are in a very brutal manner being tortured for hours and then killed. And that happens every week. You know.
I want to interrupt you. I read even babies.
Yes,
children?
Indeed. Small families, the examples, are gruesome, you know, of babies being burned to death in bathtubs full of boiling water. I can give you so many examples of just the last few weeks of the farm attacks that happened, the execution of whole families, you know, fathers and mothers who need to look at how their children are executed in farmhouses late at night. This happens in very rural parts of the country, you know, where it is difficult for people to protect themselves. You know, South Africa is a sparsely populated country in terms of the rural areas, in the dry parts of the country. So people farm in areas where they're not very close to other farmers, and that makes them very isolated. And then when it's especially older people, which are, I would say, targeted even more so, it's difficult for people to protect themselves. Our focus is on getting the story out so that the world can know about what's happening on South African farms, but also then to put the structures in place so that people can safeguard themselves. So we give everything from weapons training to proper security systems in houses, on farms, warning systems, radio systems for farmers to connect with each other. We as an organization focus very much on implementing that safety structure for the farming community in South Africa.
So what Jaco is saying, men, women, children, babies, elder people, older people. So did you know about that?
Yes, we knew already a long time about these atrocities. But yes, as you said, the world does not know it because... You had Elon Musk, and that was a very important step that he took. He, because he has a South African background, and he wrote on X about all those the atrocities about the farmer. And then there was something that happened. That was President Trump, who also spoke out against. But for example, here in the European Union, they are still denying it because I'm in a delegation with the European Union and South Africa, and I once raised the question. Why the government is not acting against it, but they say it's all fake news, it's all invented by Trump and by Elon Musk, it's not true, and that's the answer you get.
You asked, did you know? I have to remark that when I was first elected here in the European Parliament in 2014, we took the initiative to invite Steve Hofmeyr. And we had a television show like this one in those days. And then in Antwerp, in a big cinema venue, we showed his movie, or the movie that he presented, with the white crosses and the phenomenon of this horrendous murders. It's a genocide. The word genocide, I know you've got to be prudent with it, but it can be used because it is a systematic racial attack against a group of people because of their identity. And so this is not the first time that we host you here in the European Parliament, you Africans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you ask me, did you know? Yes, we know. Yeah.
Okay. You're on a tour. Can you explain to
Yes.
our viewers what is that tour?
Yes, so I visit Europe regularly. I try to visit Europe twice a year because I think it's very important that European countries take notice of what's happening in South Africa. There was this perception after the political change in South Africa in 1994 that South Africa just became a perfect Western democracy in the southern point of Africa where everything is really going well. The Rainbow Nation, they refer to that. Today, South Africa is becoming a failed state. So we have problems on any area that you can think of, from basic services like electricity and water and roads, those
the
things.
blackouts, which are famous.
The blackouts, the economic trouble that you have. But then you also have severe racial discrimination. What people don't know is that racial discrimination today in South Africa is the worst that it was in the last few decades. There's 145 racial laws in South Africa that make it impossible for some white people to get jobs in South Africa.
So almost 160?
Yes. Racial laws on the books where people are classified by their race. If I go and apply for everything from a home loan to a job, if you want to play in a sports team, then there's racial quotas. In a rugby team or a cricket team or a soccer team, there's racial quotas in sports teams and it's not on merit. So the idea that South Africa is this modern, fair democracy is a complete farce. It's simply not the case. So we need to get that story out, and that's why I visit Europe and I go to America, and we do have this effort to try and get the message out to say to people, well, the South Africa of 2026 is not the South Africa of 1994. You still have an image in your head that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay. These new racial laws in South Africa.
Yes.
Can you tell us something more about that?
Yes. So after the start of democracy in South Africa in 1994, there was this whole idea that that we needed as a country temporary affirmative action policies, to get the black population, to empower the black population. Those laws became permanent, and they now of a permanent nature. Now that is against the United Nations conventions that South Africa also ratified. But it's even now getting worse. So in the last 2 or 3 years, what we had was new laws that make that much, much more severe. For an example, if a company don't reach certain percentages of employment in terms of race, they are now punished by, they need to pay a certain percentage of their return on their profits to the government. So they are actually forced to enforce racial quotas in terms of their employment on different job levels also. It's not only in terms of the lower job levels, it's on every single job level in the job market. So, that's one example, but there's several other examples in the financial sector. It's enforced on banks. So banks need to give percentages of home loans, for example, for different racial groups. It's enforced internationally. If a European company wants to do business in South Africa, you need to give away a certain part of your business to a black empowerment company. And that's the way to do business today in South Africa. Now, what we say is that is really bad for the South African economy. We do believe that Africa will play an important economic role in the world. I think European companies want to do business in Africa, but will they do business through South Africa? South Africa will still be the focal point like it was for many decades for European and American companies? I don't know. I don't think so. It's over-regulated, and when you have these kinds of racial regulations, then European countries say, no, we're going to look at other countries. Kenya, Rwanda, there's many other options these days that they can look at for their African head offices.
Sorry, Barbara.
So, are the United Nations acting against it? Are they imposing measure? Because it's, as you said, it's against all conventions.
That's a very important part of our work as Solidarity, as a solidarity movement. So we went to the United Nations and the International Labour Organization, and we said, well, South Africa ratified these conventions, which says that racial discrimination laws can only be temporary, can't become permanent. South Africa's racial laws are permanent. And then we had had a very strong case, and there was a mediation process between our organization, the Solidarity movement, and the South African government, and there was an agreement even signed, facilitated by the International Labour Organization and endorsed by the United Nations. The South African government just don't implement that.
They don't implement
Just a few
it,
months later, they've accepted in Parliament new laws that makes the affirmative action even stricter, even more strict.
Yeah.
So now we need to fight again we need to go back to Genève.
Yeah.
We need to go back to the committees at the ILO and at the United Nations to say, well, guys, the South African government agreed to these points, and they've done exactly the opposite.
Okay.
There's, so to say, no surprise in what happens now in South Africa.
No.
We all knew that ANC would organize a communist society with a planned economy and a planned society,
Yes.
and an ideological criteria to organize society. And that is not the way you should organize a vivid society.
Yeah.
So is there a way out? Is there... You do your work.
Yes.
Please do so.
Yeah.
Keep up this good work. But how are your feelings? Are you optimistic?
So South Africa is not a failed state yet, but South Africa
yet.
is fast becoming a failed state, and it's a completely centralized state. So what did the ANC do? And you're absolutely correct. You can just look at people's friends. I always say, look at who your friends are. The ANC's best friends always were Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, North Korea, Russia. Those were the friends of the ANC. So the ANC centralized most functions in South Africa over the last 3 decades. So we became a completely centralized society, but with an incompetent government. So they centralized functions like education and safety and all the other government functions, but they don't have the competence to implement and improve those functions. So then you are becoming a failed state. So we need to look at an alternative. We always say we need a different South Africa. Something that maybe we had to look at in the beginning of the 1990s, but that didn't realize, something like a federation or a different kind of South Africa. What we do believe in strong decentralization, strong communities, Afrikaners taking responsibility for our own safety, our own economic prosperity. That's what needs to happen. South Africa need to look different in the future. A centralized government controlled by the ANC will lead to complete failure in South Africa.
I know someone who works at the South African embassy, and he said, all the foreign investments are almost zero. Yeah. Can that maybe be a trigger or something to change something? Do you think they will change something because there are no investments anymore?
Yes, because the country will become bankrupt, So what are we doing at the moment as a country? And I say we, I say the government, They are borrowing money every day to pay out social grants to unemployed people. So we have a country of just more than 60 million people. Of them, 27 to 28 million people are on social grants. We just think it's unsustainable. Where did that money come from? To pay out social grants every month? We borrow that on the international market. That's unsustainable, So the reality is that with increasing government debt, with foreign direct investment now decreasing for the last 7 years, so Europeans taking out their money, Americans taking out their money, at one point the pressure will just become too severe. The unemployment rate in South Africa, with the strict definition, is now 32-33%. If you include people who stopped looking for jobs, it's about 42%. All South Africans are unemployed. That's why you have nearly half of the people on social grants. I mean, I don't know of a country in the world where that was ever sustainable. It
sounds a bit like Belgium, but it's worse, apparently.
But it's worse,
It's worse. Is it true, Jaco, that the US takes in African refugees?
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes. So the Trump administration reached out to South Africa, and I think in a sense we're happy with the fact that the Trump administration, Donald Trump himself, were willing to speak out about things like the farm attacks and what's happening in South Africa. I think that's good. We're very happy with that. We're not against the idea of Afrikaners becoming refugees, but we try to encourage our people to stay in South Africa. We're a small people, 2.5 million people. In the last 6 months or so, about 6,500 people went to America to become refugees. We're worried that may become 100 or 150,000 people, and that's not good for a small people who need to sustain our own education, our own organizations, your own culture, So we still discourage people. We still believe in South Africa. We're honest about what's going wrong in South Africa, but we love South Africa. We believe in South Africa, and that's why we're here. We also see so many friends of South Africa in Europe, people who actually really love South Africa. Flemish people, Dutch, many Germans, they really love South Africa. We just say we need a different South Africa, South Africa that looks different in the future.
Yeah, something else, yeah. Total different story, but Oranje.
Yes.
Why is that so unique? Can you tell our viewers the story about of Oranje, and why is that so unique?
Yes. So I think one of the biggest challenges for Afrikaners as a people is that you can drive through South Africa, and in every single town in South Africa, you will find Afrikaners. But there will always be 5, at the best, maybe 10% of the population.
Yeah.
So that's our problem. We're not concentrated, And we always say, as the Solidarity movement, a people can only survive over the long term if you live concentrated. You can take very small peoples, but they've survived over centuries because they lived concentrated. They can sustain their language and culture. That's the problem with the Afrikaners. Every town in South Africa have 5 or 10% Afrikaners. So we needed a place, a town for Afrikaners. That's a exclusive Afrikaner community, like you have in South Africa many exclusive Zulu communities, Xhosa, isiZulu, Tswana, Sepedi communities. That's exclusive, though, in that cultural milieu. So yes, so we created Oranje as a town, border town, builder town, and today it's an Afrikaner town. 100% Afrikaners who live there with our culture, education, and it's thriving. Oranje is growing.
Quite unique, eh?
More people are moving there. It is quite unique. In the world, it's quite unique to create a town within a country, a private town, because that's what Oranje is. It's a private town. Paying our taxes still to the South African government, but not taking anything from the South African government. Oranje looks after its own services on every level. Its own roads and water and electricity, but also education. Its own small university with 400 students there.
400.
Yes, so that's a beautiful story, and I think people find that fascinating. We find people from all over the world traveling there to come and see, oh, what are you doing, Maybe we also need to do that.
And is it legally accepted by the regime?
It is, and that's one of the important points at the moment that is quite important for you to take notice of. So the South African Constitution, Article 235 of the South African Constitution, gives the right to a cultural but also linguistic, religious and other communities for self-determination. And that is something that Afrikaners negotiated for in the 1990s when the new South African Constitution were drawn up. Now there are radical leftist parties who want to change the South African Constitution to remove Article 235. So that's a very important fight that lies ahead in the next few months, maybe the next 3 or 5 years. And it will be very important that institutions like the European Union and parliaments in Europe, also the Americans, take a strong position on that. Because again, it stands in the UN Charter that peoples have the right to self-determination. It's in the South African Constitution, and now they want to remove that. So Oranje is quite legal because there's that legal provision in the South African government, but we know the government hate that. They don't like the idea that provision is in the Constitution.
What are the feelings of Ramaphosa and ANC towards Oranje then?
Yeah, at the moment they're mostly ignoring it because they have so many problems. The reality of South Africa is we have a government in a deep, deep crisis. So it's a government who can't deliver, can't give the kinds of services that their people need. The people who vote for that government, that those people demand basic things like a job, good housing, basic good services. So we've got a government in crisis, constantly involved in looking at problems with large-scale corruption and state capture and these kinds of things. So they're very much focused on one crisis after the other. They really fall back from one crisis to the other. The ANC is also a political party in crisis. They went from 56% to 40% in 5 years between two elections. So they only won 40% in the last election. In the polls, they're at the moment standing on 34, 35%.
Okay.
Now, that's a political party that governed South Africa for 3 decades on their own. So they're a political party in crisis. They formed a government that's in crisis. So yeah, they're not that much focused on Afrikaners and what we're busy with.
You have a government with a lot of parties together,
Yes.
I heard.
Yeah. So it's now nearly 2 years that we have a so-called government of national unity. Not really what it is. It's a coalition government, but no one wants to call it a coalition government of 9 political parties. But the ANC still control all the most important positions. The president, but then all the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Finance, Defence, all the key positions they do control. We do have some of the opposition parties or other parties in that government that control departments like agriculture and education, which is very important. And there we do see an improvement in government actually at the moment. So it's a contrast at the moment. You have this very large government. There's in cabinet more than 60 people, 60 ministers and deputies. No, it's one of the biggest in the world at the moment because they try to accommodate everyone in this enormous government. And you will still have now some government departments that's a complete failure, and then others that are actually improving services, but it's difficult. It's a complex government. You can just think of a coalition government with 9 political parties that are very different, from conservatives to complete far left-wing, like near communist parties, So that makes it a unique story in the world at the moment. But I don't want to say, because we have this government of national unity, South Africa is going in the right direction. I mean, our population grew by 4% last year, our economy by 1%. So you can just imagine.
Jaco was welcome to talk about South Africa with you, but I heard something that another party, NVA, didn't want to respond or didn't want to invite you, or?
Yeah, there were sent invitations too to meet Flemish Minister President Diependahl, but he refused, I heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually disappointing, that we've reached out to both the Flemish Prime Minister and also the Belgian Prime Minister.
Okay, you also asked the Belgian Prime Minister.
I've met with him a few years ago, actually.
You've met with him.
When you were still the mayor of Antwerp, I've met with him. So I think...
and in that position, he was able to receive you.
He was able to receive us, but I think it's now even more important. So, I mean, the relationship between Belgium, Flanders specifically, but Belgium also and South Africa have always been very strong. And there's real reason for them to focus now on South Africa, what's happening in South Africa. When you talk to politicians individually, they will always say they see the same things that we see. They see the same challenges and problems, but they never want to take it public. And I think that is the challenge with many political leaders in Europe at the moment. Many government leaders, not only in Belgium. We see the same in the Netherlands, Germany, all these countries. You have the political leaders who will tell you in private, I'm really concerned about farm murders and what's happening in the government and all the crime and the economy in South Africa.
Basically, it's the same thing. They have other problems and many, many other problems here in the European Union.
Indeed, so,
But I can tell you that we will, next year, will organize an exposition about farm murders here in the European Parliament.
Okay.
So in that way, we can, of course, support you.
We need to get the story out. The reality is more people know today in Europe about farm murders than 5 years ago. And why? Because there's people like you who just keep on doing things, taking all kinds of initiatives to get the message out. And that's what we need to do. I think we must just always take small steps, do more. I think the new media allows us to get the message out in all kinds of different new ways. So I'm still positive, that I do go around Europe or America and find many more people aware than what was the case 5 or 10 years ago.
Okay. So on every end of our program of the European Talks, we have a dilemma, of some dilemmas. And I think vetkoek, you can eat it as a lunch or you can eat it as, let's say, a piece of cake. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
so I'm going to ask you, do you prefer vetkoek or the real Flemish chocolate?
Oh,
That's a difficult one, eh?
That's a very difficult one, you know. I
Both very, yeah.
Yeah, I will.
Lots of sugar, eh?
Indeed. So I will stay with the fat cook, you know, but the fat cook is also not that healthy, you know, because it's deep fried.
Very deep fried.
But you always go back to your own, you know. You always go back to what you're best known for, you know, and you always go back to South African food. South African food is great.
Okay. Jaco, it was very nice to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goed, ik hoop dat u ook dit keer heeft genoten van Europese gesprekken met Barbara en Gerolf. Heel graag tot de volgende.